Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Cabinet meeting on the 17th of September 2024. We have apologies only from Councillor Phil Larratt, who unfortunately is suffering with his leg, for those who know that he sometimes suffers in that way. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members or officers on any item on the agenda? Thank you. Minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes to sign off from our meeting on the 8th of July. The standard set of minutes, corrections, the 9th of July, the standard set of minutes and minutes of the exempt session of that Cabinet meeting. Does any member of Cabinet have any corrections to make to the minutes before us? Is it therefore Cabinet's wish that I sign both sets of minutes as an accurate record of the meeting? Thank you very much. Chair's announcements, item 5. Just to say to opposition colleagues who are in attendance this evening that I know not everybody on the speakers list seems to be with us currently. There are traffic issues around Northampton in particular, which is why the Chief Executive isn't with us at this moment. But per the briefing note in the speakers list, we currently have 105 minutes worth of speaking time scheduled before we get to Cabinet members. So if members can keep their comments brief, concise, and pass over their allotted speaking time if what they wish to say has already been said by others, that would be greatly appreciated. Item 6 is a report from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We don't have anything on the agenda. However, Councillor McCord is in the building and he has a constitutional right to address the committee, so I'd invite him to speak if he wishes to do so.
Thank you, Adam. It begins to fall into place then, because I wondered why the comments from Overview and Scrutiny were at page 113 as Appendix B to the Corporate Plan Report, as opposed to at this point in the agenda. Nonetheless, at our last meeting, I think, of the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, we did look at the annual plan, and we welcomed the fact that the Council put forward the annual plan. But this year, as we did last year, we struggled to answer a number of questions like, what does good look like? Is the WNC performance good, bad, when compared to other councils, when compared nationally? And what is WNC doing this year as compared to last year? And none of that was in the annual report. And the committee felt that it should be in there in some sort of way that we can say last year's figure was 80, this year's figure is 82, 85, 90, 76, whatever. We can at least draw, are we maintaining performance or going up or down? So our request from Overview and Scrutiny to Cabinet is, when you're redoing the annual plan for this current year, to consider and please put in some sort of comparisons that we can know prior year should be easy. Comparing against others may be more challenging because you never know what's in the others index. So, but I do think we should be doing that. So it's all contained, I think, around page 113, 114. There are a couple of suggestions made there. That's on the electronic version, page 113. If you got a printed version, it's completely different. Yeah, but on the electronic version, it's page 113. It's not on the printed one. I don't think that appendix is actually printed. But there you go.
Thank you, Councillor McCord, and we'll certainly take those comments on board. And I think especially the comparison with previous year's performance is perfectly reasonable. So we'll ensure that goes into next year's annual report. Item 7 is the revenue monitoring report for period 4 of the current financial year. Pass over to Councillor Malcolm Longley.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Right, well, I'll refer you all to start with to page 15 on the printed version. Yeah, I'm not sure what it is on the electronic one. And if you look at that chart there, that's the summary position. And we're demonstrating now, this is the period 4, but this is the year-end outlook, of course, at period 4, at the end of period 4. And it's showing currently an overspend of 3.8 million. And if you look at the sort of the column headed P4, that's I'll explain 1 or 2 points on that of significance. The big numbers on there are the Children's Trust and the Adults Trust as well, Adults Directorate as well. But there's some interesting news there, because when I look at the Children's Trust, that's been a bane for the last 2-3 years, as we all know, nothing new there. But what we've got a new finance chair has come in, who I've got a lot more confidence in, and coupled with their finance director, who was putting huge efforts in, and we've got quite a bit of time for him. They've now stabilized for the last 2 or 3 months. So that's actually a very good sign. So I'm pretty encouraged by that one. It's still 5 million overspent, but as a forecast, but it's stabilized. And if you run down this there, we've got adults as well. They, as I understand it, have now stabilized on period 5. Period 5. Our first look at period 5 is that it's looking as stable here all through anyway. So that's encouraging news. I wouldn't put any more than that. And the half year will tell the tale. So, but the other interesting point on that is that we've not brought into, as we normally don't do this till the second half year, we've not brought in the Treasury input, which I would expect to be positive. But what it has done here is we have used the 10 million contingency that we put in the budget. So whilst we've got a little bit of wiggle room here, if it stays the same like this, we'll be fine. If that budget, so long as something coming down the track isn't too devastating, I think we're in reasonable shape at this stage. But it's still very early days, of course. So moving on from that, if you go to page 24, it's the HRA forecast outturn. Well, that's pretty much stable, and you'd expect it to be so. It's obliged to be so. So I'm not going to comment too much on that. I'll move on to the page 28, according to the printed version, and what that shows is that's the savings, or the productivity, I always call it. Now, the significance of this is that year on year, we've had overspends from adults, we've had overspends from children's, and but in each case thus far, we've managed to balance the books. Now, the interesting point about that, and it will be this, we're in budget period now, by the way, for those that don't already know it, for next year. The only way that we will balance the budgets, both as previous years, this year and next, is by productivity improvements, because I don't see the adults and children's significantly improving anytime soon. So we have to concentrate on productivity. So look at the budgeted savings there. There's still a few in the red, but by and large, that's not a bad picture. But I emphasize it not for the specific numbers itself, but for the principle involved. If we move on a little bit further to page 48, I always comment on the Treasury bit. It's the bit I like best, oddly enough. And if you look there, then the borrowings have remained pretty stable and will do so. Most of our borrowings are very long term, anything over 20 years and beyond, the overwhelming bulk. But if you look at page 46, you'll see that the borrowings total are 574, of which roughly half is for the HR is for housing, and the other half is for the general fund. But also we have 100 million roughly where we've got loaned out. So the net borrowings is 442. And so, Chair, I'm going to stop at that point unless anybody has anything they wish to ask of me.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. I've got 3 speakers on this item. I've got Councillor Holland-Delamere, Councillor Randall and Councillor Harris. Keith, would you like just a few minutes to settle down, and I'll call you at the end of the speakers list. Councillor Randall, then please.
Thank you. I've only got a few questions because I'll leave. I'm sure Keith's got far more than what I've got. Car parking. Obviously, we had that debate in here about increased parking charges. And I know that there's £150,000 less collected than what was anticipated. Now, do you think that's because of the increase in the parking charges? Because there's no good saying it's for home workers, because I don't think anything significantly changed. But is that something that you need to start reconsidering again? You know, we've just done, or, you know, we spent all the money on the Market Square. Is there, you know, any scope in having, you know, wherever, first 2 hours free? Do you think that might bring people back? And for those staying a bit longer, then they might pay. It just seems to me that, you know, we're preventing people. Well, it shows, doesn't it? If we're 150,000 down than what we anticipated, it shows that increased parking charges isn't working. So, and I'm really passionate about parking charges, especially on country parks.
Councillor Longley, do you want to answer?
Yeah,
I'll
deal with that straight away. Yeah, thanks, Wendy. I mean, as we all know, budget time is here upon us again, and car parking is always debated at great lengths. And I mean, I wouldn't try and second guess what does and doesn't make it. We all have our views on that, but it'll be a very, very big topic of what we do and what we don't do, you know, and how best to handle it. It's interesting. I always park in St John's, and depending on what time I get in, but Brian, if I get in later in the morning, well, if I get in normal time, I park on level 6. But if I get in during the day, I can never park on level 6. And progressively since COVID, I've gone up level 8, level 10. I now park on level 12. So they've been coming back since COVID. Now, whether that's it, whether it's charging, I don't know. The debate will rage until for the budget. And have your 5 pennyworth. Everybody has a view on that. And I can assure you there's some very strong ones.
Councillor Harris, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a couple of small points, but I think they're significant in regard to the narrative within the report itself. So in 2.3, it has narrative commentary, which talks about representing a real achievement given the financial pressures experienced throughout the year. It makes reference in broad terms to the fact that the utilisation of contingency was included in there. It doesn't say what it was, and I think it's important that it should do for clarity and for the record. And similarly, it makes reference in 2.5 that some items were capitalised, but it doesn't say to what value. So I'm simply just raising the point that I think for the record and for clarity, it ought to include those items. Thank you.
And Councillor Holland-Delamere.
I'll just comment on that if I might, Chair. Thanks, Jonathan. We'll check it through, and there'll be fairly straightforward answers, as you'll appreciate.
Okay, we're in revenue, aren't we? Yep. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, yeah. So some of the usual suspects in there, as we're aware. It is concerning that we have utilised the contingency this early in the year, but I recognise that's what it's there for. I think with the challenges we've got with adult social, that's really concerning. That makes really concerning reading. So I'd really ask, what sort of forward plans have you got in place to look at how we can mitigate against that increasing risk to us as an authority?
I'll let you sit down, Keith. Okay, so. Yeah, thanks for that, Keith. Well, you recognise where the pressures are. We all know that, and what we tend to do is our approach is to say to the directorate, and in this case it happens to be adults, but it could be any one of them. We only want to really hear the bad news. Give us all the bad news, because the good news, you always get to hear that. So all the bad news, we always try to put a worst case scenario. If you followed the last 3 or 4 years you'll notice that we start at a level and progressively we've got better each year. Now, there's no guarantees that that's going to happen, of course, but that's what I was in two minds whether to go for the 3.8 overspend or not put the contingency in, go for 13.8, doom and gloom, and then get better as we went on during the year. That's another way we could have approached it, but decided not to do that because everybody knew the 10 million was there, so might as well be upfront about it, was the line we took. And that's what you're seeing there. Now, I'm expecting, I can't speak for children's because that's been a bit of a bumpy ride, but I told you what I think about it at the moment. We would expect it to be a worst case scenario unless something express train comes down the track we don't know about. So the contingency plan, the plan always is to put the worst case scenario and then try and row back from it. Now, we're very early in the year, and I always think that if you get to the half year and you've got it in control, you're pretty much safe. What you can't do is to leave it beyond the half year, because you get diminishing returns then, obviously, as the year goes on. So we meet up with Stuart over here on a regular basis, and he really looks forward to these meetings, I'm sure. And we do what we can there, you know, and we'll see how it goes. Just we'll track it, but that's the plan for what it's worth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. Councillor Golby.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just thought I'd add in a couple of comments. Obviously, we're talking about adults, which is got that £9 million overspend, which is obviously significant. And just to try and give some assurance, obviously the context and the narrative is described in the report as to what the reasons pushing that. But this morning I was with Stuart, the director, and we were looking at all the tools and the reporting data that Stuart gets to use, that all his teams and the decisions are feeding into. And one of my challenges is, has the directorate got the grip on all the different areas driving the costs? And I have to say, I think they have. And I'm always impressed when I get to see all the data that sits behind what's driving the costs. And I was again today. And I know we've had the LGA come in to look at commissioning very recently, and there's a chap called John Jackson, who's the president of the Association of Directors of Adult Social Care, and his report basically says that we're doing as much as we can, and we've just got to try and deal with the demand. And also it's starting to look like some of the more preventative work is deflecting from some of the higher cost drivers as well, but that will hopefully come through throughout the year. And as Malcolm says, it is perhaps best to get the bad news out as soon as possible, and we can start and work and do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. I think most of the points raised by speakers have been covered off. I just want to add something on car parking charges, which I think Councillor Randall's right to have a look at that, but I do think that we need to understand how that shortfall in income has come about, because of course there are several different aspects to our car parking income. We've got the country parks, we've got our on-street parking, we've got our multi-storey car parks. So I'd personally be interested to know where that shortfall has come about, and then we can review the policy moving forward so that we've got the optimum price points at the various locations, and we're both serving the public and making sure that we're not doing ourselves a disservice in terms of the income that we need to put back into those facilities. So if I can make that request of the Executive Director for Place, that we have a breakdown of the car parking income compared to last year, just so we can start to analyse where that apparent shortfall is coming about. Did you want to comment?
Happy to do that, and we'll do that as soon as possible. There is also a financial a challenge in terms of how VAT is also aligned, which is also incorporated within the 150,000. So it isn't just about numbers. It is much wider challenge that we've got on car parking at the time. So I'll make sure the report reflects all of the issues that are included in there, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, then we've got recommendations as ever at paragraph 3 of the paper. A, B and D are to note the various updates in the report. Recommendation C is to delegate authority to the Executive Director for Finance in consultation with the portfolio holder for finance to apply any budget variants required to effectively manage the overall budget. Is Cabinet agreed? Thank you. Moving on to item 8, which is period 4 general fund and housing revenue account capital monitoring report. Councillor Longley.
Thank you, Chair. 2 reports here. Primarily this report is all about environments. Environments is, for those that aren't familiar with that, is when a project, say, is running underspent, as a number of them do from time to time, then it's the reallocation of that resource elsewhere to another project, maybe. That's environments. And if you look through the report, this is the general report, then the HR, they're primarily all about environments and the reallocation of resource within the same budget. The general capital fund is, I probably bored you with this one, is the CAB group. Nothing goes through the capital unless it goes through CAB. And there's one this morning, in fact, and usually about a dozen items going through. And they'll have gone through quite a bit of due diligence, as it were, before it gets to that, and then it's agreed or not at that meeting. And the primary thing is the first question is somebody else paying for it? Answer yes. Well, okay, not too worried about that. If we're paying for it, where's the productivity? Where's the payback? What's the return on it? And that gets debated at some length. And then, you've got statutory items which you can't do anything about anyway. And then you go to maybe the lesser ones where it's part funded and so on and so forth. So there's quite a clear hierarchy here. And it's because of that approach to a control of borrowing, which is effectively what we're doing, puts us in the position that we are at the moment with headroom to be able to do some of the more productive items. So that's what the general report's all about. As I say, if you go through it all, you'll see it's a shuffling process or environment, really. And if you want to look at the detail of the various projects, it is there in detail. And if anybody's anything specific about a specific project, the best thing to do is to come to myself or Simon or Martin afterwards, because there's a lot of detail there. When we move on to HRA, this is something we really don't have a great deal of control over, as you will all appreciate. But it's a similar story, and in that it's mostly environments, and therefore anybody's got a particular question on a particular story, then we would do our best to answer that in financial terms. I mean, if it's talking about the specific thing, probably Bobby has probably got a better idea than I've got. So, but so that's those 2 reports, folks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. We've got 3 speakers on this item. Councillors Holland, Delamere, Purser and Beardsworth. Start off with you, Keith.
Yep. So I mean, it's obvious that basically with so many projects going on, there's going to be a bit of drift in the budget in terms of when they're going to be actually delivered. So recognise the transparency here in terms of sort of timescales which are approximate, etc. I know things come out in left field. Just when it comes to some of the HRA capital projects, there's actually 2 in my ward, so Ecton Brook Care Home and Harefield Road. And I just ask, so 10.3, Ecton Brook Care Home and Harefield Road. And if you could just communicate with the ward councillors about those projects and how we're at. That would be great. I mean, in terms of deliverability of projects, I think that's a concern that we do need to make sure that we're realistic about the delivery times of all our projects.
Thanks, Keith. Fair point.
Thank you. Councillor Purser. Thank you. Councillor Beardsworth.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions I need to ask. The delay in new build, I'm surprised that that's as it is because we're desperately short of housing. With the Grenfell disaster, what progress have we made on the cladding removal? And who is paying for it? Is it coming out of capital? And what about claims? Also, modular housing, that's in the pipeline. And I was a little surprised when I got these papers to see, and I'll have to declare an interest, Chair, because I'm chair of the Kerr House charity, which owns Sheep Street, to say that it's been put on hold yet again because of insufficient funds. And I haven't been told. And I just think that's a very bad breakdown in communication when the people involved have to read it in a document rather than being told by officers. But those are the 3 questions, and I would like to say I'm very disappointed about the situation with the Kerr House Trust. Thank you. Do you want me to wait and hear the answers?
You're welcome to return to your place, Councillor Bearsworth. But firstly, apologies for the communication breakdown regarding the Sheep Street project. We'll have a look into that for you. Councillor Longley, did you want to address the other points?
Yes, I can't really comment. I mean, this is a financial statement, and the delay in new build is that reflects in the finances, of course, and that's what we're reporting on. I'm disappointed as you in delay in the build, so I don't know what I can say about that, because all we're doing is reflecting here what the reality of the financial situation is because of that delay, and each one has a story, as you will undoubtedly be aware there. So we need to get the stories of what's actually happening there to see what the implications are. The cladding, well, that will depend very much on who owns the bill, who built it, and I think there's a lot of national arguments going on at the moment, as I understand it. It seems to be delayed. I don't know why, but usually it's finance. I'm not aware that we're outstanding on anything from a council. Sorry.
So, Councillor Longley, I'm going to bring in Jane Carr at this point, just so she can clarify the position on cladding.
You're going to help me out, Jane?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the cladding removal will start on the 30th of September. We've got the financial agreement through Environment in NPH for that work to take place. Then the follow-up will be to look at what's going to go back on after that. But we're doing the removal from the 30th of September.
Last point was the modular housing. I'm with you on that one. I think it's a great idea. And I think that, Stuart, you want to talk about, we looked at some, didn't we? But do you want to talk about that, Stuart?
I was going to talk about Sheep Street. There is 2 projects in Sheep Street. I don't think the reference in this paper refers to the site that we are talking to you about. So again, I will clarify that position, but I'm confident that it's a different site, and the discussions we have in regard to the charitable trust site is still progressing and is still moving forward. So again, I will clarify that though, Sally, if that's all right, and I'll get back to you before the end of the week in regard to that.
And on modular housing, I suspect I'm going to bring in Councillor Herring.
Yeah, I've had a meeting with Clear Futures, who are the procurement company. Been to see a scheme in Milton Keynes. We're going to see another scheme in Eastbourne, I think. And we've had a look at the proposed sites, and we'll be bringing a detailed business case back through Cabinet as fast as possible.
Thank you. At that point, I'll draw members' attention to the recommendations at paragraph 2 this time. Recommendation A is that Cabinet approves the proposed budget reprofiling environments outlined in section 6 and detailed in Appendix A. B, that we note the latest capital monitoring position for the General Fund and HRA, and C, that we note the new capital schemes and changes to the capital programme since the approved budget position considered by Council in February 24. Is Cabinet agreed? Thank you. Moving on then to the corporate plan performance report for Q1 of this year. Now, I'm going to pick out a few of the a few highlights myself, but then I'm going to invite Cabinet colleagues to reflect on any particular, pardon me, on any particular issues that they wish to highlight in their respective portfolios. So under priority 1, green and clean, in the last quarter, 4,660 fly tips were cleared. Whilst that's a slight drop from the previous period, it is in fact well over 500 more fly tips than were cleared in the same period of last year. 295 electric vehicle charging points have now been installed in the West Northamptonshire area, representing significant progress since April on that front. Under priority 2, improved life chances, we've seen a substantial increase in the number of initial contacts into the multi-agency safeguarding hub. I think it's worth reflecting on the immense pressure and the workloads experienced by colleagues within that service and the tremendous work that they do, but notwithstanding that, we still have a 98.2% of referrals with a decision made within 2 working days. Under our connected communities priority, number 3, 98% of all reported defects that have been allocated are closed within the timeframe specified. Those are priority 1 and 2 defects on our highways. And within our customer services directorate, we're now up to 95.4% of contacts being deemed unavoidable. Picking out a couple of the housing completion stats under the priority 4, working with our partners, 102 affordable homes were completed in the last quarter, well ahead of target. The paper before us stipulates no target for new council homes built. However, we still obviously are pursuing the targets around new council homes in conjunction with NPH. However, we are working with specialists to look again at the viability of the existing pipeline and how we can ramp up the deliverability of social housing in the years to come. Under priority 5 of economic development, I think it's a really positive news story that we now have 94 apprentices employed in substantive roles in WNC, providing a career pathway to young people and demonstrating that we're willing to invest in local talent and provide those opportunities to our young people. Priority 6 is robust resource management. There's a downward trend to report in the aged debt from £24.3 million in March. It's down to 19.7 million, which is really significant progress. And in terms of our collection rates, business rates, we're exceeding the target by a reasonable amount, 1.5% ahead of the Q1 target, and the council tax collection rate is not far off our stated target, 28.96 compared to a target of 29.73. So good performance on that front. But I'll go around the cabinet table and give colleagues the chance to pick out anything that they wish to highlight. Councillor Baker.
Just to talk about the EHCP plans that we're working exceedingly hard on. We now have a permanent team of staff that started at the beginning of this month who will take over from those agency staff we had in place to help us to work through the amount of applications that we were having. You will notice that we've had an increase of 434 on this period last year. So we've still got high numbers of applications coming in. And we're not where we want to be yet, but everybody in the team is working exceedingly hard. And I think they need some praise for that. It's a very difficult situation to work in because obviously parents are really stressed when they get to us. They want to get this done as quickly as possible. So figures are here to show you. They have all improved slightly, not to the stage where we want them to be yet, but it is showing a good trajectory going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things. I thought I'd mention the successful completions of adult drug treatment and alcohol treatment. If you look into that, we're actually making significant progress and raising the success to above national average. And I've been very impressed. A lot of cabinet and us as members don't actually get to see some of the work that goes on in these areas, but there's a huge board made up of lots of partners that work really hard to work with and improve outcomes around drug and alcohol use. The only other one I was going to mention briefly was the admissions to residential and nursing care homes, which is the first couple of measures in the report, and admission to residential and nursing care homes for those age 65 plus and 18 to 64. So there's both some good improvement in progress there too. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hallam.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I think we've all noticed, and I've certainly noticed that the experience of customers is that call wait times have gone up. And that's disappointing to see, but I wanted to put some context around it because in the quarter, we had 78,669 contacts into customer services. If you divide that by the number of working days, obviously we open Monday to Friday, within the quarter, you're left with 1,268 individual contacts each day. And I know it's probably an evening for sort of getting bad news out, as I think Councillor Golby said earlier. I expect the call volumes to go up. The summer has been difficult. I think people's confidence in what the new government is going to do has gone down. And whether it's our responsibility or not to look at an area, the types of demographic of worried people that we get calling in are slightly more older, maybe more vulnerable people that will call in. So the trend that we're seeing is that that high call volume and slightly longer wait time is going to continue. Now we are doing some things to address that, more on around sifting people out of the system that don't need to be in the system, as it were. So if somebody was perhaps a younger person and would ask a chat bot or something like that, or would ask an FAQ, would look at an FAQ, or would use the internet more, we want those out of the system so we can spend more time on those more older, vulnerable people that we do think are going to call up more over the next few months.
Thank you. We now have 4 speakers registered to speak. Councillors Purser, Holland de la Mare, Andal and Harris. Councillor McCord also wishes to speak. Ian, do you want to go first? You may think that. Couldn't possibly comment, Councillor.
You're not going to argue. Couple of points, and some of it actually relate back to what I was just saying earlier about what we're looking at and how you interpret that. So page 86 are clean and green recycling. On the face of it, looking at the graphs and looking at the trend line, it's going down. Reading the narrative, it says, well, we don't often collect a lot of leaves in January, so it's not a problem. It's very difficult to be able to tell from that as to whether or not the recycling performance is right or wrong, or that's probably not the right language, but whether the recycling performance is going in the right direction. Maybe we should have an individual target, recognizing the fact that in that quarter, if the leaves are done, in the winter, there isn't as much green bin waste around, but it's not clear to be able to pick that out. Moving on then to, I've only got three sort of other ones. Planning performance on page 100. Now, we're reporting major 83 and non-major 87, but we're not saying where agreed extensions have been allowed. Because when you then look at the MHCLG national figures for this, the pictures are completely different. Because the planning department here ranks about 306 out of 329 planning authorities. And the highest numbers, a percentage of those having extensions agreed is West Northampton across the whole of the country. So, there's things wrapped up in that, where if you say, yeah, it'll have another 3 weeks, it then gets put on the pile as being out on time. The residents I'm representing are certainly not seeing things turned around in 6 weeks. Some of them simple household applications are taking months to be turned around. And then the other thing on page 107, the sickness reports, long term. Again, what we would like, and it was something that we asked at when these were being done at our last scrutiny review, was to try to separate out long-term sick from short-term sick, because we do recognise that the 8 point whatever days for the target will probably be made up with 2 or 3 unfortunate individuals with some long-term condition that are on very long-term sick who always skew the numbers. So it would be helpful to be able to pluck that out, either as part of the narrative or as something else, instead of wrapping it all up in one number and saying, "Ooh, on average 9 days sick is a lot," without taking out those long terms who could be skewing that number. So again, it's very difficult to draw any conclusions. It's the only points I want to make.
Thank you, Councillor McCord. Take your point about the comparisons for the waste and recycling. I think we do have a comparison in the narrative for the same period last year on the residual waste treated, but that's not uniform across the different KPIs. So take that on board. In terms of the ranking of the planning department, I believe you're quoting the low cog rankings that were distributed either earlier this year or last year. They were heavily disputed by chief executives and leaders across the country, and I wouldn't put much stock in those. I don't know if our chief executive wishes to comment on that, but certainly those rankings that came out were heavily criticised by many sources across the sector, and they're to be treated with caution and a pinch of salt, I would suggest. On that note, we shall move on to Councillor Purser.
Thank you. Lots of information in here, almost not enough time to look at it in the detail it actually deserves. Just a few points that I think we need to look at the way we record our housing data. We had a really useful discussion on the housing allocation system last week. Excellent presentation from officers. One of the suggestions was that we were more upfront about how many people are on the waiting list, how many people are in temporary accommodation, how many people have been housed in the last period of time. And I wonder if that could be incorporated in here, just as a way of sharing understanding about this. Fly tipping is still a huge problem. Whatever the numbers say, we are not on top of this, and we really have got to get a grip on what our population is doing, who is doing the fly tipping, and what we can do to stop it. So whatever the numbers are, we're not on top of it, and it brings our town down. Older people staying at home after they've been in hospital, looks like the figures are going in the wrong direction here. I don't know whether that is the numbers or whether that's a real figure, but it kind of struck out. If we're trying to keep people staying at home longer after they've been in hospital, we need to be understanding why figures are not going in the right direction. School exclusions, I talk about this almost every time, but it's a worrying figure, and we really need to keep our children in school, and because that is their future. And I don't know, it's an issue for us locally. I'm sure it is an issue nationally. It's a post-COVID phenomena, but we kind of need a strategy to work with our education partners to keep children at school. Right. Positive thing, once again, the museums are performing well. I actually think our interpretation in our museums, the quality of the displays, their accessibility are actually better than some national exhibitions. So I think, you know, this is something that the town really is good. I'm not sure we're yet marketing our museum as well as it could be, so that everyone knows that they need to visit every exhibition that's on there, because they are excellent. So I don't know whether our comms people can really think about how we promote the museum as part of what's excellent in our town. Right. I think, yes, complaints is an issue. I think how we learn from complaints that come in to the authority is a key point of learning for us. I suppose the question there is, are we really learning from the complaints, and are we using those to address problems within the services that we offer? I think that's more than enough from me.
Thank you. Just bring up a couple of points off the back of what Councillor Purser has said. Firstly, a minor correction. When I was addressing Councillor McCord's points, I referred to LOCOG when I meant offlog. I've inadvertently created a new Quango, so apologies for that. In terms of fly tipping, I think actually that the figures do represent a really concerted effort to address this problem and to take action. The number of fines are increasing markedly. The number of fly tippings dealt with across across a long period of time have risen significantly. So as members of this new government are keen on saying there are no quick fixes, but we are getting to grips with this problem. And I would just remind Councillor Percy, he talks about bringing our town down. We do serve 4 towns and a large rural area, and fly tipping affects the rural areas very much. I know that it's seen by his residents in Northampton. In Abington, I've seen much of the fly tipping myself, but this is a problem that affects the whole of West Northamptonshire. I'm sure Councillor Lister will take on his points about the museum. It is excellent, and we're always looking at ways to improve the marketing side of things and to drive more people into the museum so that they can spend more money in the centre of Northampton and benefit the local economy. So grateful that he's picked up on that positive. Got Councillor Hallam and then Councillor Baker.
Yeah, on the how do we learn from complaints, it's in the stats actually, and Leader, you referenced it as well. So the stat that's important, and maybe we should rebadge this, but is unavoidable contacts. So unavoidable contacts almost sounds like a negative thing. A better way to describe that, I think, is first-time callers. So first-time callers is at 94.4%, which means that repeat callers is do the maths quickly, 4.6%. If you look at the previous period, it was at 93.1%, and therefore the number of repeat callers was higher. So I think that's definitely an important measure and shows we're going in the right direction. But a lot of the complaints, I think what we see now and we see in the future, are because people get frustrated because of long call times. And unfortunately, I see the call times going up, not down, because of people's concerns over different issues.
Exclusions. I'm just as concerned as you are about exclusions. None of us want to have children out of school. That's where they should be. There's various reasons for this, and actually I'm always sometimes been quite surprised about why children are excluded from school. So there is quite a bit of work to do with schools on this matter. You may have noticed in that team of people that we got funding to bring in to help with all of our educational healthcare and all of this work. We had a team of specialist teachers who are now visiting schools. In fact, I called to a school in my town this morning, and one of them was there doing work with them. And this will be to actually look into why children are excluded and to help stop this happening. And also we're working with the trust to make sure, when I first took on this role, it was a real looked after children did not get excluded. There have been some cases of this, but we are working very hard to go back to those figures where schools were of the opinion that we didn't exclude a looked after child. So we are working really hard on it.
Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the point you made about being at home 91 days after discharge, we are obviously aware of this and are not overly concerned. And we do know that our reablement team, since it was restructured, is doing a really good and efficient job supporting people out of hospital. And we do know that this rate will fluctuate slightly, so it's one to keep an eye on. And if there is any update, I could get one for you, Councillor Purser. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. We've got Councillor Holland-Delamere next.
Okay, I'll just go on to one of the areas I was going to ask about, but firstly on the fly tipping, one of the concerns that I have is how many times we have to double report the same incident. I know in my area, I've had residents feeding back the number of times I report something, and a week later or 2 weeks later, it's still there. And I'm wondering if one of our contractors is massaging the statistics in one sense by actually saying we've done a job when actually we haven't done a job. We've just ended up wasting people's time by reporting the same problem a second time. But I'll take that outside of this meeting. Just want to thank Martin Henry for the email that he sent about housing benefit delays. I bring it up all the time, and I thank you for the transparency there about some of the challenges there. It is a real concern, and I will be asking questions about the staffing situation there as well, because with some of the casework that I've had recently, it's obvious how those delays have impacted in other areas like housing allocations. And I did ask a question the other day about the impact of housing benefit delays on emergency accommodation and people getting into permanent accommodation. So really concerning that it's gone from 41.79 to 73.79. Recognise the issues with the computer systems, but we really need to know timescales, because I've been asking about this for, I think, 2 years, and it's 6 months, and that was 2 years ago.
Thank you, Keith. Just going to bring Stuart Timmis in to respond to the point about fly tipping and the contractors, I think.
Yeah, and again, more than happy to work with the councillor in terms of analysing that. Obviously, fly tipping, there's a number of caveats, whether it's on public or private land, if there's contamination within that land, etc. So we do keep a close watch on contractors, and therefore that's why I'm more than happy to work with the councillor in understanding the particular instances his residents are raising to double check. I think there will be circumstances why it has been left, if it has been left for that long. But again, happy to check and report back accordingly. We absolutely need to tackle this as has been said. So happy to work with the councillor on those instances.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments, Keith. Councillor Randall.
Thank you, Chair. Right, customer satisfaction. So that's been mentioned a few times already, and I know you said not to repeat it, but I'm getting increasing workload because people can't get through on the phone. People phone through because obviously they've got a real issue or concern. I had a lady this week, she spent the whole of her 45 minutes hanging on the phone, not being able to get through. That's because she's on 0-hour contracts. She get universal credit. So the amount she pays for her council tax varies from month to month. She couldn't get on her system and everything else. So you know, and I think that comes down to customer satisfaction. If they're not getting through, they're not going to feel like they're getting a good service. The other thing, though, to link on that is maybe the website is poor. Well, in fact, in areas we know it is poor because that's come under review. If the website was a better website and made it easier to get through, I'm sure that would reduce a lot of the calls. So when I've gone on there, and I have brought this up with Belinda Green before, that I still don't see a website, an email where somebody can email through to the department if they can't get through on the phone. And, you know, obviously these people, a lot of these people are very distressed. They don't want to receive you know, £100 court fine, you know, if they miss a payment. So, you know, so please, you know, will you look into that, see what we can do to improve that website? If there's, you know, email addresses that we can put on there to make it easier for a customer to put their point across. Housing benefit and council tax reduction scheme. Well, that new, the new system was, obviously, it was only supposed to be shut down for, what was it, 6 weeks, and it ended up being four months or more. So, you know, for people to try and get their new application on there, 20 days determined for a new application, it was actually taking 73.79 days. I'd imagine that's where probably a lot of your calls are coming through from on that as well, along with changing circumstances on your council tax for anything. Target 8 days, actual 21.43 days. So, you know, I'd imagine that these new systems that were delayed have caused a lot of those calls coming through. EHCP plan, Councillor Baker. So, you know, you did raise that. What I don't see on there is, obviously we're going in the right direction on targets of 20 weeks, but there isn't on there the ones that are well over the 20 weeks. As of the beginning of August, the longest waiting time for somebody to receive their final plan was 70 weeks. And what it means in some schools is that you've got some applying for their new HCP plan in, say, April, and they've already got their final plan, but you've got other children in there that have been waiting, you know, significantly longer time and still haven't got that plan. So the parents feel, you know, that it's unfair. So maybe we could have a measure of, you know, the ones outside those 20 weeks as well.
That's time. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Mike, Councillor Hallam, did you want?
Yeah, happy to come straight back in. I have just emailed regarding that that website email address, and we'll get an answer on that. Actually, there's a whole digital offer that we're working on at the moment, and I'm surprised that you didn't know, but we actually have a small council working group looking at the website, of which Councillor Chowdhury sits on, and we last met in August. So there's a number of things going on with that, but actually there's a wider piece here. We launched our innovation hub just last week, and we had 1,000 members of staff attend either in person or online to contribute ideas. I think we've already had over 200 ideas coming forward, the type of which is how can we deal with these things. But the one thing that I would say is innovation isn't the catch-all, because the type of younger person that might want to engage, or be more happy to engage on the web, isn't the type of person that we're getting picking up the phone. And that's why I come back to those more older people that are not that confident with the internet, would much prefer to speak to someone. That's the type of people we're getting. And I think you mentioned the call wait time visit of 1 hour last week, 45 minutes last week. Unfortunately, last week, 29,456 older people across Northampton had their winter fuel winter fuel allowance removed from the government. That causes anxiety amongst older people, and whether we're the right authority to call or the right place to call, people do then pick up the phone because they're concerned about it. So I think certainly that impact last week is perhaps one of the reasons why that 45-minute wait time was there. We are aware of it, we're doing what we can, but I'm managing expectations that not, I think, unfortunately, those call wait times are going to continue the more we get in news that worries people, and those older people want to pick up the phone.
Thank you, Councillor Hallam. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Leader. It's just really to pick up a couple of points. So I don't know, Councillor Randall, whether you're mixing up the systems then, because the council tax system was only down for 4 weeks and came up exactly when it should have done. The housing allocation system, was down for longer. Obviously, there's a lot of work going on in Revs and Bens at the moment. I think the other thing we need to be cognizant of is if you email, it's still the same set of people who have to answer them. So whether they're on the phone or doing email, it's still the same customer services team. So maybe picking up the point Councillor Hallam's mentioning there, what we're trying to do then is make sure the people who've got more simple requests potentially come off and use the sorts of things we all use in terms of things like web chat,
and get an acknowledgement. We have what you've asked us to do. We are processing it so people know something's happening, to try and clear away some of the simpler transactions and then focus on the other people who've got more complicated things, like the lady you're saying, where her circumstances change all the time. And I think just the other thing to say to yourself and Councillor Delamere is we have had the DWP back in again since to audit the plan, and they're actually very pleased with the progress and the steps we're making. Their offer to us actually is, what else can we do to help? So we absolutely know we've got to crack this in terms of getting the benefit stuff better and faster. The plan has got a set of timescales against it, and we'll make sure that we stick to that and update you accordingly through this meeting maybe. Thanks.
Thank you. At that point, Councillor Harris.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of broad points, if I may. First and foremost, Councillor McCord has alluded to this earlier on. The Corporate Scrutiny Committee has had some discussion about the KPIs. I think you may have been present actually at one of those when we were talking about some of the measures. And some of them still broadly don't really look entirely fit for purpose is probably the bottom line for that. So, and I think there was general agreement that they needed to be reviewed and addressed and potentially looked at for 2025 onwards. And I think I would just urge that we continue to do that. We have still got some measures that seem to sit in the wrong place. I always point out the visit to leisure centres is in green and clean, not quite sure why. But it's just a fundamental principle. I think they do need to review and overhaul. And I'm not dismissing the amount of work and energy that goes in behind that. I appreciate all of those sorts of things. There are still quite a lot of areas where there are targets missing. You've also referred to council housing. Council housing doesn't appear to have a target. So it's back to the point from earlier on. What does good look like? 5 doesn't sound great to me, but we don't have a target, so we're not really measuring it. I want to make a similar point actually in regards to affordable homes. 102 sounds great, and yes, it's up against the target, but how many houses actually have been completed within that time frame that are not affordable homes, that are general homes? Because I suspect the 102 is probably quite a small percentage of that, and again, probably isn't compliant with our policy that we set out in our planning documents. So I think it's just about making it more robust to understand the full picture, so we can get those better comparisons. I will flag, I think we've all looked at the 66% satisfied with service from customer service team. We all take the point that there's a huge volume, and I want to make sure Councillor Hallam is aware that he's not the only one that's concerned about winter fuel allowance cuts. But it will be interesting to see the data on those calls to see whether in fact that is the driver of those calls. I'm sure he's got that to handle and provide it. Because again, we don't necessarily get to see the broad range of reasons why people make those calls. So that sort of information periodically would just be quite useful so that we've got that spread of that information. And if it's there and I've missed it, I apologise, but it just would be useful to have that understanding. Again, I have to mention the housing rate of 73.79. We all know and all try to get under the skin of some of the issues and challenges behind that. But I hope that we can really focus hard on getting that back on track absolutely as soon as possibly we can. I've got one other point which is related to service issues in general terms. I've had calls recently to get the waste services team involved in an issue about waste collections, missed waste collections. They've been brilliant, extremely responsive, and wrote to residents effectively. It's traffic issues, blocked cars, parked cars, preventing collections. They were excellent, wrote to all the residents in the particular area where the problem was. However, it's disappointing to see that a letter goes out from the council with no name on it. And I have a real fundamental problem with that. I think if we are writing to people from a team, yes, it had the department and a contact number, which takes you back through the switchboard, but no name. And I think we need to be responsible for that from a service point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Yeah, Councillor Hallam.
Yeah, just on the data, I think I don't particularly want, I don't have a desire to look at the data at the moment because I think there'll be a natural spike with all of the media coverage and the fact that it's been announced and been voted through. So I don't think that will give you a true picture. However, what I'm really, really interested in is the Q3 and Q4 data as we progress through the winter and how many of those people we had to divert for help or divert to someone that could help. So I think we need a little bit longer to see that true data picture. And then obviously we're more than happy to share it and potentially share it with Councillor Golby's anti-poverty strategy too.
Thank you. I'll just pick up the point about the council housing target again, which I briefly explained in my introduction, but we are going through a very detailed piece of work at the moment to reprofile exactly how much council housing that we can deliver. I don't think it's any secret that MPH have had significant difficulties in delivering some very major schemes that would have taken us far beyond the initial target for council housing during this initial term of WNC. So whilst they continue to experience those problems, I think it's wrong for us to publish a misleading target that, you know, whilst we're still working up precisely what we believe is deliverable and will meet the need of our residents. And you have my undertaking that as soon as that piece of work is complete, we will return to publishing a reasonable and you know, a stretching target of council housing delivery that this district needs. Did anyone else wish to raise any other points? No. In which case then the recommendation is simply to note the appendix covering performance for WNC for the first quarter. Is Cabinet agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item 10 is with Councillor Breeze and is large-scale photovoltaic installations.
Thank you, Chair. This council has made a commitment to its residents to explore every feasible course of action that will reduce our carbon footprint and make us a resilient and sustainable organisation for the long term. As part of that ambition, officers have been looking at the benefits that our own solar energy projects can bring to achieving this aim. The solar scheme before you sets out how we can go about this. We can reduce our overall costs as a council and improve our environmental performance. To be clear, although the title is for large-scale photovoltaic installations, we're not proposing buildings, the huge solar farms that make the news. We're proposing smaller projects. We'll also be improving biodiversity through biodiversity net gain, and several of the projects are on the roofs of existing buildings and car parks. Within the paper are details of the council's energy usage across its estate. What has been established, and the reason that this paper has come forward, is that it has become clear that with investment, there is potential for the council to generate in its entirety its energy usage through a series of small projects. It could be that the council funds all the investments from its own resources or works with partners with whom we would share the financial benefits either on all or some of the sites. We are asking today that Cabinet approves the commitment of 1.272 million to move to the next stage of the assessment, which includes the design, seeking planning permission, seeking electrical grid connections, assessing the practical and commercial uses of including battery energy storage, and developing a procurement strategy. Once this stage is done, the council will decide how to proceed. We may proceed with some or all of the projects ourselves, if the returns are right and the risk is low enough. We may select a private sector partner or partners to work with us, sharing the investment and the return. If at the end of this stage, the council decided not to use its own capital, it could recover these costs from rentals through a third-party operator. Wherever possible, we'll be using the energy generated ourselves or providing it to partners. This keeps the benefits local and maximises the financial returns. Using the energy ourselves includes using it for charging EVs, for example. We'll keep our eyes open to technical developments in the field to see where even better returns might be made. So overall, I believe it's worthwhile proceeding with this project to the next stage to help both the council's goals and financial needs so that we can better serve our communities. And I propose that Cabinet accept the recommendations of paragraph 3 on page 2 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Breeze. We have 4 speakers on this item, Councillors Duffy, Purser, Holland-Delamere and Harris. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Chair. Right, sorry. In my view, solar farms have no adverse environmental impacts. For the country to reach its net zero target, all energy consumers need to take action to get their energy from renewables. Solar farms are now a conventional source of renewable energy in the UK. The latest round of contracts awarded by Ed Miliband of the Labour Party government included nearly 100 solar farm projects ranging from 10 megawatts to 50. In total, they will be contributing a total capacity similar to that of offshore wind. These contracts were awarded at a price of 7p per unit. The council is currently paying over 20p per unit. So there is scope for the council to save money, reduce its CO2 pollution and fix its energy costs. But there is no need for the council to have to invest its own money to achieve this. The report failed to include the most sensible option, which is for the council to go out to tender in the same way as the government. The council could offer the land it has available for solar farm installation and ask bidders to provide power to the council for, say, 25 years at a fixed price. Such as the Transport for Great Manchester has done this already. Power purchase agreements, this should also cost much less to implement than the 1,200,000 odd, say 100 to 150,000 pounds. Solar panels are also good for farmers because the area needed for biogas crops is much more than what solar panel farms would take up. I'm very worried about Talavera because it is densely housed and people need the open spaces. I can't comment on the locations because of course they weren't in the report, obviously. I'm just saying that the £1,000,027 seems very high, and is this justified? The runoffs from the solar panels on a large scale will be decreased if sets of panels, we're talking about the farms here, are kept apart and the water then drips onto the ground instead of running off and causing problems with excess water. It also allows sheep to graze. The gaps would allow sunlight to reach the flora below.
Janice, could you wrap up, please?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Breeze, did you want to respond to anything in there?
Oh, I'm just going to thank Councillor Duffy for her support for the
Yeah, I'm just
proposal.
worried about that 1.2.
Well, you mentioned other methods of funding, and that's all covered in the report. It may be that as a council, we decide we don't want the risk reward ratio, although I think it does look quite tempting. And as you mentioned, it's a 7p per unit generator price now, but all that's covered in the report. And if at the end we have spent 1.27 and we decide it's not the right thing to expend our capital on, it is something that we will be able to go out to third-party providers and recover those costs through
Right.
rent and other methods. So there's no commitment at this stage to greater capital expenditure, but it's
Okay.
all being looked at.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. Councillor Purser.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to just follow on from what Janice is saying. I think again, it's a welcome paper. It's obviously the right direction for us to go as an authority. I guess the issue is how we assess risk and how the council determines what its level of risk it wants to take on something like this. Now, it sort of relates to, I think, Malcolm's earlier paper on capital, which I didn't talk about or talk to, because this afternoon I thought, Thurrock. They got into a lot of trouble, and I was really wanting to check that our governance processes are robust enough for something like that never to happen here, because it seemed there it happened incrementally, and this is an incremental project, and we just need, and in a way the criticism was of the governance processes, and the opposition got pretty much I would say a kicking, but they were criticised for not questioning robustly enough some of the capital schemes that were coming through, and that the governance wasn't robust enough. So I suppose my question is just to check that our processes for developing capital programs like this, which are kind of developed bit by bit, can cope with us not making daft decisions.
Look at the maturity profile.
And I have to say, Councillor President, I have great faith in the capacity of this cabinet now, cabinet leader, but particularly, and our head of finance, to look at risk and take it very, very seriously. And certainly Thurrock, I probably be careful with my words, but a council did fall into the hands of a very plausible individual who persuaded them to part with enormous sums of cash for very dubious projects.
Thank you. Keith, no, passing. Thank you. Councillor Harris. And then we've got Councillor McCord after that.
Thank you, Chair. You won't be surprised to hear me broadly welcome this. I think there are wider issues to ensure that this is done with the appropriate amount of robustness. Clearly, that goes without saying. But I think in terms of the broad approach and concept, it's welcomed. The only comment I would make in this is referred to in the report in very small measure. It talks about sustainable and other renewable energy sources. And my concern is that we throw all of our eggs into one basket, actually, and we don't necessarily look at the wider range of renewable energies as well. So again, I would just ask that that is included in the scope, and we just don't throw everything into solar. Solar has got lots of appeal, but so have many other sources of renewables. So it's really just to make sure that we do that from a balanced point of view. A specific example is there are organisations seeking data warehousing spaces. I had the email exchange with Simon Bowers about this recently, and they will do this for free. They'll site data warehousing in leisure facilities, and you've immediately got access to some energy return and energy regeneration. There are things called aeroleafs, which will sit on roofs that are effectively mini turbines. So my plea really is that we just make sure that we look in the broader sense at all renewables rather than just focus on one. Of course, the benefit for solar is you do have the opportunity to cover over car parks, and I think that's one of the great benefits, and that provides a really good opportunity. So broadly welcome this. Can we make sure we also include battery storage in this process rather than maybe everything just going back into grid? Because I think that would help with our capacity. The final point is a broader point really, which is, are we doing any work on a local area energy plan? This is something that obviously links to planning. It's about future proofing energy supply, not just for us, but also for the wider area. So it's probably a question for Stuart. I'm not sure whether that's work underway or flagged for the future or not. So thank you.
Did anyone wish to respond to the points raised by Councillor Harris before I invite Ian to speak?
Just to come back on a couple of points. Thank you, Councillor Harris, for your broad support. But this particular paper is on photovoltaics. But I absolutely take your point about not having all our eggs in one basket and looking at other technology. And indeed, you mentioned particularly battery storage, and that is part of this proposal.
Thank you. Councillor McCord.
Thank you. Welcome to our brave new world. If it doesn't breathe, doesn't eat hay, and doesn't fart, we're going to farm it. So, but overall, I think I'm only looking at the financials of this. So I've got a few questions. So has the greenness of this factored in the carbon dioxide emissions from moving these panels from source of manufacture, which is probably China, to here? So have we allowed those sort of things in our calculations? And if so, you know, what allowance have we have? Well, we're trying to offset 1% of 1%. The battery storage, I think, is the most important thing here, Rebecca. I know you mentioned it there, and I thought that was quite useful. And the other point that you mentioned and the report mentions is grid connections, because this will all, I think, stand or fail on that. I think the idea of what you're putting forward of the mixed economy is probably the right way of doing it. A couple of points though from way back that I don't see in the business case. When we put solar panels on the roofs at Toaster and Brackley leisure centres, there were, I think they call them inverters, but they've only got 10 year lifespan. They have to be replaced within the life of the panel itself. And I didn't see anything within the within your figures for that, nor did I see anything for decommissioning costs. Because if we're going to have something which is merely a 25-year life, I think it's fair to put the decommissioning costs in as well as part of that business case. And I have a real fear that the solar panels of today will be the asbestos of tomorrow, as to, you know, what's going into these very complicated laminate structures and how easily will they be able to be taken apart and broken back down to the constituent parts. So all those sort of things I don't see in there. I'm not quite sure whether the business case would still, I don't think it's enough to smash the business case, but it might not make it look quite as stellar as maybe you'd be proposing.
Well, hopefully this next tranche of investment will bottom that out. I have to say I completely agree with everything you've had to say, Ian. I don't know about that. But certainly I'll find out about the inverters, and absolutely I agree with you on sourcing them from closer to home than anything that has to come through the Suez Canal or China.
Thank you, Councillor Booth, and thank you, Councillor McCord, for your comments. Cabinet, the recommendations are at paragraph 3, and the recommendation is to allocate an initial capital budget of 1.272 million to allow the progression of the project. Is Cabinet agreed? Agreed, thank you. Item 11 is with Councillor Golby, revised sexual and reproductive health commissioning and procurement.
Thank you, Chairman. So this report is brought to Cabinet to agree and approve a revised proposal on the WNC sexual and reproductive health commissioning process. And I think the report is actually very clear. The purpose is to prevent service disruption and protect WNC residents' health and well-being, and alternative commissioning arrangements have been appraised following risks identified through the soft market assessment following the previous Cabinet report. The recommendation of having a section 75, which is reference to the NHS Act 2006 agreement with the existing provider, has been identified as one of the most feasible options moving forward. So the arrangement has been recommended for 3 years from the 1st of April 25 to March 31st, 2028, with a fixed budget envelope of £2.269 million per year. This contractual arrangement does not include the HIV treatment contract, which is separately commissioned by NHS England and the Northamptonshire ICB. So the current provider is in support of having the suggested contract arrangements, keeping their patients' sexual health and well-being paramount. And we have had initial meetings with the current provider to share our expectations of the service delivery within the given fixed budget and hear their opinion on feasibility to deliver our enhanced pathway and service specification. This arrangement will ensure timely commissioning, mobilisation and implementation by 1st of April next year. And these 3 years will also provide us adequate time to address any identified risks and build intelligence for a seamless future procurement process by West Northamptonshire. So, Chair, I'm happy to propose the recommendations, but I also want to thank Anna Perner, who's sitting at the back there, for her work in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. 2 speakers on this item, Councillors Randall and Beardsworth.
Thank you, Chair. As we know, this contract was originally due to end, and we extended it to 2023. Where it was due to end 2023, we extended it to 2025. Now we're going to extend it again as a new one to 28. Bearing in mind, when would we start looking at that contract to go out to procurement? Following on from that, last time there was significantly rates that were lower than the national average. So what I want to be assured is that this time we will see improved outcomes. So I'd just like to be assured on that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Councillor Beardsworth.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any problem with revising the Sexual and Reproductive Health Commissioning. The thing is that it has had some difficulties in the past, but we're hoping that this time it will be better. But I hope that it will coincide with item 16 on the report, when we're proposing a new service delivery model for 0 to 19 health visitors and school nursing service that will tie in with the education that young people need about sexual health and reproduction. So I hope those two people will work in collaboration. The people doing the commissioning and procurement, but also work with so we can get education firsthand to young people at school to prevent any sexual diseases that can affect a child's life forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Chair. So performance is obviously paramount to this, and it also this contract also links to the 0 to 19 service that we'll be talking about in a minute. So there's a interrelationship there, and of course we want the best outcomes. So yeah, I'm not going to comment on procurement moving forward. Perhaps that's something that Sally could comment on now or outside the meeting. But I also just want to recognise that Natasha is here as well, that's also worked on this. Thank you.
Thank you to both of the team members at the back for all their work on this. So we have at paragraph 3 several recommendations which are quite lengthy, so I'm not going to read them all out. Cabinet are familiar with them already. Are we all agreed? Agreed, thank you. Item 12 is with Councillor Lister. It's the procurement of 4-year single e-lending resource platform contract for libraries across both West Northamptonshire and North Northamptonshire councils.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, it's a 4-year contract with Belinda, who most people probably know as BorrowBox. It combines 3 contracts into a single one with a single provider. It's a £700,000 contract. The 4-year contract ensuring that we keep the first year equivalent contract all the way through. It's a split contract between West and North with the value split between both councils. Belinda's guaranteeing the existing stock, so all of the stock that we have currently across the 3 platforms will be moved over, and if they don't have that stock, they will give us credit for the equivalent, so we don't lose any value of what we've got. It also, I think we've just got about 89 magazines currently. By taking out the 4-year contract, we also have 1,200 e-magazines and e-newspapers. The recommendations are there. Happy to recommend it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lister. Councillor Jolly was down to speak, but she's not with us. We know that there are significant traffic problems in the Northampton area. Did any members of Cabinet wish to make any comments? Fairly straightforward, this one, but I'd just like to commend the service of BorrowBox and the associated features. They're a fantastic reason to get an e-library membership. You can access all sorts of wonderful publications from around the world. I know it keeps our very own Councillor Irving Swift with access to Le Figaro and other the Francophile publications. So there's much to recommend it. Recommendations are at item 3. Bear with me whilst my computer catches up. And the recommendation is just to approve the spend through a direct award procurement, as the total cost for the 4-year contract will be £700,000. This is a key decision. Is Cabinet agreed? Agreed, thank you. Back to Councillor Goldby for item 13, which is the recommissioning of the carer support model.
Thank you, Leader. So the purpose of this paper is to seek permission to recommission a carer support service in line with the vision set out in the WNC Carer Strategy, which came to Cabinet earlier this year, which is a very good piece of work in a lot of people's opinion. We're all aware of the valuable role that unpaid carers provide to the people they love, and therefore it is essential to have the right support in place to help a carer when they need it and to give them an occasional break from caring responsibility. The current contract for carer support comes to an end in March 2025, and therefore we will need to have a new commissioned partner ready to deliver the new support model with effect from April 2024. The new model will put more emphasis on in-person support via one-stop carer shops, information and advice for carers, and respite support. This will be delivered within the existing budgets. So we're therefore asking for approval to recommission the service and for the delegated authority to be given to the Executive Director for People Services to take any steps necessary to ensure a successful procurement exercise. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Goldby. Two speakers on this, Councillors Randall and Beardsworth.
Yeah, thank you. Just one quick question from me. It says in the report that there's a shortfall of unknown carers of approximately 22,000. And obviously, I assume that we plan to identify them through this new scheme. It also says at 5.8 that respite provides a fundamental part of the prevention of crisis. And there's an addition to where the cared for person, for example, might go in a care home for a week or two. And it talks about having a crisis response service and planned break service. So if it was deemed that a lot of those people then would get some respite care and they haven't got their own funds to pay for it, would that come out of this fund or would it impact on our adult care budget? Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Councillor Goldby, do you want to answer that now? Or?
I'll sit on another question.
So we'll take your comments first, Sally, then we'll wrap things up.
Thank you, Chair. Today I was at the AGM of Community Law, who works very closely with the carers service and does an awful lot for them. And I totally agree we need to recommission, but they say 22,000 people that are known carers, but there's got to be more than that. There's wives that look after husbands, there's husbands that look after wives, you know, to a certain degree. And I'm worried about respite because we haven't got the space to put people into respite at the moment. So what do? We can't offer them respite because we haven't got anywhere to put them. So how do we arrive at doing something like that? Because that's people want, is that just a break in the 24/7 cycle of looking after somebody that is in dire need. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of people that do it willingly and don't think themselves as carers. But there are those who desperately need that respite. And I just don't know how we can provide that. And maybe this recommissioning service will be able to help us find us a way to do that. So I do have reservations, let's put it that way, that how we can help carers like we should do.
Thank you, Sally. I think just on the numbers, 5.1 sets out that we believe that the carer population of West Northamptonshire is 33,000 or so, but we only have just shy of 11,000 on the carers list. So the 22,000 that you quote is the shortfall in the shortfall between who we know and where we've identified them and the potential carer population of the district. So I think it's getting at the fact that we need to know who these people are so that we can actually roll out the help that they need and deserve. But I'll pass back to Councillor Colby.
Yeah, and just following that, Chair, one of the big parts of the carer strategy was how we can make it easier for people to come forward and access our services and to support them. And again, the 22,000 people, these are people who identify themselves as carers and not all have support needs. And the respite point is funded from the care budget. And we do have 2 new respite services in the independent sector that we fund through direct payments as well. So hopefully that covers those. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Were there any other comments from members of the Cabinet? No. So the recommendations are at paragraph 3, that we approve the procurement of a carer support contract, approve a proposed contract term of 3 years with an option to extend by up to 2 years. And lastly, delegate authority to the Executive Director of People Services and the Chief Finance Officer in consultation with legal services and procurement to take any action necessary to ensure a successful procurement. Is Cabinet agreed? Agreed, thank you. Item 14 is with Councillor Herring. It's the Landlord Services 24-25 Q1 performance report.
Thank you. This is the first of the new style reports that are coming to Cabinet on a quarterly basis, outlining the performance of NPH. As you know, we are the landlords of approximately 11,500 properties managed on our behalf by Northamptonshire Partnership Homes. There are an alarming number of KPIs showing red, although this is partly due to a removal of the amber warning from the reporting system. And if you drill down to some of the red KPIs, there's only slight deviations such as 99% and not 100%. However, there's no room for complacency, and central government is tightening the regulations on landlords for rental properties to be in a safe and decent condition. The council have employed surveyors Jartain to do a condition report on the stock, and this report will be presented to Cabinet in the near future. There have been delays in obtaining gas and electricity certificates due to tenants not always allowing access. The system has now been updated, and if not voluntarily access will be gained through a court order. Delays have been caused by the new allocation system that the council has brought in, but this went live last month and allocations are rapidly being made and MPH are catching up. In order to improve oversight, there are new weekly meetings taking place with MPH. Complaints will be reviewed on a monthly basis, and they will be starting up soon and will involve myself. And I have also attended my first tenant engagement event, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Herring. We have 3 speakers on this item, Councillors Purser, Beardsworth and Harris.
Thank you. As you know, I'm on the board of NPH. I welcome this report coming to this Cabinet. It suggests that we're making the right sort of progress in things. And on the face of it, the report makes for worrying reading. And tenants really should expect repairs done speedily, and their complaints handled well as well. And neither of those things are in place at the moment for enough people for us to be concerned about it. I think in the past, perhaps our rhetoric has been better than our performance. And I think we just need to get to a point where I hope the new system brings greater transparency and problems can be identified and tackled. I know that the management team at MPH is absolutely focused on this, but we've got a huge task to improve here, I think, and that it involves a lot of people. 11,000 houses is a lot of units to deal with. But I think it's going to involve all of us absolutely working together to get on top of this. And I hope that those measures are all in place so that actually our tenants get the service they properly deserve.
Thank you, Councillor Purser. Councillor Herring, did you want to take all of the questions and comments first, or did you want to respond to each in turn?
As Bob said, I don't think that was actually a question, but I actually agree, obviously, with everything that he's stated. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beardsworth.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad to see we've got a couple of members here tonight from the board. And I think governance is a thing that the board's duty. And basically, when I had looked at the measures that have not been met by landlord services, I was staggered to say how many the performance they just haven't got to. Tenants deserve better treatment. Some of the properties they're being put back into. I was looking at some from a lady the other day, cupboard doors missing, just awful states of these places, and people have moved in there. If you move somebody into a home that's not looked after, they're not going to look after it. You need to have a better standard of care for people. And the maintenance seems to be taking an awful long time to get done on void properties especially. The state of our homes is something, you know, they've only got 11,000 now. We used to have 25,000 when I first started on the council. A lot of them being sold to the right to buy. But basically, we really need to give our tenants a better start in their homes, really. And I think the board has responsibility to make sure that not just the council, but them looking into why, and maybe going out and having inspections of these properties and see what they're expecting their tenants to go and live in. Also, there's no mention of other housing providers' performance. We have Futures, we have other places that have, do we have any measures of their performance and how they look after their properties? Because we could learn lessons from them if they're better or, you know, or not as good, but we need to know what we're putting our tenants in, basically. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sally. Councillor Herring.
I take your point about the state houses are handed over, and you've made a comment about that, and I will look into it and take that point specifically. And as far as the other registered providers are concerned, there is an actual agreement between the council and those registered providers, and they are responsible. This is MPH's because we are actually the landlords. But Jane Carr might want to make some extra comment about that.
Yeah, sorry, just to say, RPs have their own TSMs anyway, which they have to report through. So this is our report because we are the landlord. With regards to our relationship with other RPs, though, we continuously have conversations with them, some of which we had a previous stock transfer through previous councils, which we have a strong relationship with, but we talk to all providers as much as we can.
For the benefit of those listening or who aren't aware, an RP is a registered provider of social housing. I'll just make a couple of comments before we wrap up. I think what this report says is that currently the situation is not good enough. And, you know, we're now getting a clearer line of sight because of the governance changes that we implemented some time ago at the council, and also the further changes that were made in the reporting mechanisms that were introduced because of the new regulator for social housing. Make no mistake that we are fully engaging with MPH. We'll continue to provide them with every possible assistance. But until such time as the situation improves to our satisfaction and residents, tenants are getting the service and the accommodation that they deserve, we will take every necessary measure to make sure that we as a landlord are fulfilling our duty, which is a legal duty. Jane, for her sins, is a legally responsible person for housing matters, and there are significant legal responsibilities that fall on the shoulders of people at this council, but that pales into insignificance compared to the duty that we owe those residents in those properties. So we take this report very seriously. You have some of the actions being taken to improve the performance listed in the report, but we are going much further beyond the measures in the report. And as I say, we will take every necessary measure to improve the situation. So we have the recommendations at paragraph 3. The recommendations are just to note the context of the report and note the actions being taken to improve areas where performance is below target. Is Cabinet agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item 15, I believe is Councillor Baker, the proposal for the Hunsbury Park Primary School to take over the running of the on-site early years provision.
Thank you. I think most of the story about this is in the papers already, but I just wanted to say this has come about from the very sad death of the head teacher of the nursery school, which is part of Hunsbury Park School. When we discovered that, it looked as if we were going to have to close this nursery down for some time in order to go through all of the procedures that we do as a council. But I want to congratulate our team in education for the very rapid and speedy way that they went through all the processes that we have to do in order to make this safe, which means that we are going to be able to open this school on the 23rd of September, which is next week. And the initial prediction was after Christmas. And I was very concerned about the fact that that would be a lot of people that need to go to work and have a safe place for their children. So this will become part of Hunsbury Park Primary School, and it means we've reduced the age of that school down to 2, which will be nice for the transition into the primary later on, I think. But I don't think there's any more to say. This is a very unfortunate situation, but a good news for the council that we have been able to do this so quickly. And for that, I thank my staff in the education team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. There aren't any speakers on this item, but I'd like to echo those words of thanks to the people in the education team who have expedited this process in the most remarkable way to ensure that we can get children into this facility far in advance of the time that we would usually expect under such circumstances. So go back to you, Councillor Baker.
Concerned, we have done a consultation and we had 47 replies to our consultation. 45 of them were in support of us doing this. So I think we're doing the right thing here. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move to the recommendations. They are that we approve the lowering of the admissions age range at Hunsbury Park Primary School, and that we consider all responses received to the public consultation held between the 13th of August and the 10th of September. Is Cabinet agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item 16 is with Councillor Golby, and it's the proposal for a new service delivery model for 0 to 19 health visiting and school nursing service, including proposed changes to the service specification and an outline consultation plan.
Thank you, Leader. So the report for Cabinet details the proposal for a new service delivery model for the 0 to 19 health visiting and school nursing service. And to me, it represents a huge opportunity to improve outcomes and drive improved performance based around many of the priorities for our children's services, particularly around prevention and taking advantage of the opportunities the creation of the LAPS has provided. So there are details regarding proposed changes to the service specification and consultation. The report details the proposed arrangement between West Northamptonshire Council and the Northamptonshire NHS Foundation Trusts for the delivery of a new model of the 0 to 19 health visiting and school nursing service from the 1st of April 2025. Approval is also requested to start a 6-week consultation on the new model starting from the 30th of September this month. So there are lots of key points. First off, the 0 to 19 service And the Healthy Child Programme is a local authority mandated programme that includes key mandated health checks for children, young people and their families. The 0 to 19 and HCP service is currently delivered locally by the Northamptonshire Healthcare Youth NHS Foundation Trust, otherwise known as NHFT, as a county-wide offer for children, young people and families living in North and West Northamptonshire. And on January the 17th, North Northamptonshire Council and West Northamptonshire Council decided to contract separately and disaggregate the 0 to 19 service from April 2025. On the 3rd of April 24, the Children Education Housing Scrutiny Committee supported the option of a partnership approach between West Northampton and NHFR, the NHFT, the 0 to 19 service provider, to develop a new 0 to 19 service model. And there were a number of members, I recall, from that scrutiny committee here this evening that may recall that meeting. On the 7th of May 2024, the Cabinet approved the commissioning option for the Council to work towards improved integrated working, a partnership model that enables NHFT and WNC working together to deliver children's services. Cabinet also approved delegated authority to the Director of Public Health in consultation with the Adult Social Care and Public Health portfolio holder, myself, and the Children's portfolio holder, Councillor Baker, on the commissioning, procurement and mobilisation of the new service from April 2025. The new service model is detailed in the report, which is very comprehensive and will have 8 universal contact points instead of the 5 mandated ones by government. We have added 3 universal health checks that are developed locally and 4 pathways of support mapped across the Thrive framework. These are getting advice, getting help and getting more help, getting risk support and specialist referrals. A communications plan will be developed, which will align with the work being undertaken relating to the family hubs and early help, and the delivery will be through the current allocated budget and no increase in the budget envelope, and will be ring-fenced from the public health grant. To deliver the 0 to 19 service, WNC will enter a Section 75 partnership agreement with NHFT, similar to what we talked about earlier, for the delivery of services under the new service model outlined. The recommendation is to support the new service delivery model and propose service specifications for the 0 to 19 health visiting and school nursing service from April 2025 and approve the start of 6-week public consultation commencing at the end of this month. As mentioned, the service specification is included in the pack, which is well worth a read through. And again, I would like to acknowledge the work of Rasha Fayed and her team involved in getting us to where we are today. I think it's a big step forward, and hopefully, as I said at the start, we can drive much better performance and better outcomes for children and families. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matt. We've got 2 speakers on this, Councillors Randall and Beardsworth again.
Thank you, Chair. This is a brilliant piece of work, and I hope it all comes together because everything is covered within there. It really highlights in that report what an awful decision it was to close your Sure Start centres with all that early help gone. So I feel like we're almost doing a full circle again now. So it does say in there about engaging with, I did note, town and parish briefing, members briefing. Well, how is that going to work? And what is expected from town and parishes? Is it just a fact of putting up a poster or what really? I don't know what it means by that. There's also says on page 219, there's a planned public consultation. Does that mean it's open for anybody? Am I allowed to attend that if I wish to attend? And if so, where and what time? Thank you.
Councillor Beardsworth.
Thank you, Chair. If this plan comes together, it would be a wonderful asset to the bringing up of children in this day and age. I'm sure mental health is added into that because we're very much aware that CAMS can't cope, and if we can get children early enough to help them through a difficult phase that might not develop into something worse. So I'm really delighted that this is coming forward. I think school nursing and nursing service, it's from 0 to 19, so it covers a wide spectrum, but also it actually then can pick up if people are having difficulties with babies that can maybe need extra parenting help, those sort of things, to keep the parents and children together in early life. So I think that would be a real beneficial. So I have really high hopes for this. I think it'll be really good. It'll help. Last year we put in the budget, we would like some mental health nurses or counsellors in schools. And I'm sure this will go some way towards that, where somebody can go and actually talk to children and help them with their mental health and obviously their physical health as well. But I'm absolutely delighted with this. I hope it comes into fruition, and I hope it's as good as it sounds.
Thank you very much. Pass over to Councillor Golby. Sorry, missed your hand there, Fiona.
Okay.
Councillor Baker.
I just wanted to pick up on the parish part of this because, and also on some of the comments Sally was just making, that a lot of this will go into our very hard-working family hubs that we're setting up all over our West Northants Council. So these services will play a major part in the setup of those hubs and the spokes that we're going to have in various parishes as well. So information over to parishes, I think, will be to inform them of what we're doing and how they can be a part of that, as they are in the Moulton parish, very actively working hard to be a part of this family hub spoke. And that's what we would like other parishes to be involved in, if possible.
Thank you. Councillor Golby.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Comments, Wendy, I agree, and Sally, this is an excellent piece of work and it is an easy political point to make to talk about Sure Start centres, although I did hear an interview on the radio with a new Labour government minister being pushed, and there's no plans to actually bring them back. But our local answer is our family hubs, as Councillor Baker mentioned, and again, working through this piece of work and with all the other wraparound services, I hope we can drive and improve outcomes. And on the point of the scope of the consultation, I will check that and come back to Councillor Randall on where we can get involved and where we can publicise it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the recommendations are before us at paragraph 3. They are that we support the new service delivery model and proposed service specifications for the 0 to 19 health visiting and school nursing service from the 1st of April 25. And secondly, that we approve the start of a 6-week public consultation commencing on the 30th of September on the proposed new service model, partnership agreement and changes to the service specifications. Is Cabinet agreed? Agreed, thank you. Item 17, still with Councillor Golby, Health Protection Service, Food and Feed Standard Service, Spray Paint Enforcement and the Tobacco Enforcement Plans for 24-25.
Thank you, Chair. And I won't do a very brief job of this because I don't want to do the team that have worked on these things at any disservice. So legislation requires the Council's regulatory service to present 4 plans to the Cabinet on a yearly basis, and they're included in the appendices to the report. These are the Health Protection Service Plan, Food and Feed Standard Service Plan, Spray Paint Enforcement Plan, and the Tobacco Enforcement Plan. So the Health Protection Service Plan and Food and Feed Standard Service Plan includes the requirements set by the Food Standards Agency and the Health and Safety Executive, and we are the enforcing authority for over 4,200 food premises and over 1,600 feed premises and over 8,600 businesses for health and safety, which are a huge number of premises we're talking about. The plan shows how competent officers will help ensure that local businesses stay safe, that food and animal feed is safe to consume, and how they will take enforcement action when necessary. Regulatory services are being supported by the Food Standards Agency to address a significant backlog of food hygiene inspections that could not be carried out during the COVID-19 pandemic, and many other local authorities are in a similar position. So the spray paint enforcement plan shows the council's enforcement plan to prohibit the sale of aerosol paint containers to people under 16. And the tobacco enforcement plan shows the council's enforcement plan to carry out a programme of age restricted tobacco controls that include a work stream around the supply of disposable vapes to underage young people, which is recognised as a national problem, and legislation will be forthcoming to control the sale of and marketing of these products. These services contribute significantly to the health and wellbeing strategy and corporate plan to underpin health and safety for our residents and a strong business community. So it's recommended to Cabinet that we approve the Health Protection Service Plan, the Food and Feed Standard Service Plan, the Spray Paint Enforcement Plan and the Tobacco Enforcement Plan for 24-25, and they're all appended within the main set of reports. And again, as I've done all night, so I just wanted to recognise the really good work that I've come to see and come to understand more since having regulatory services within my portfolio, and commend the work of the officers that they go about and undertake their business with. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Two speakers on this, Councillors Purser and Beardsworth.
And I welcome the detail that Councillor Golby has gone into introducing this report. It comes to Cabinet each year, but it's an activity that really goes under the radar. But when something serious happens, we're very dependent on having an effective environmental health and regulatory services for the safety of our whole community. Food safety, the number of premises we've got, the number of premises with kind of 1 and 2 stars that we've got. I was reading the report, I was staggered by the number of acts of parliament that they're responsible for enforcing. And we learned, I think, through COVID, the dangers of ignoring the skills of environmental health officers. And I think they are important for all of us. Last year, we heard of the risks that within the community of vaping. We also heard that our staff team has only limited resources to monitor and check the sale of vaping. So that is a bit of a concern. And I suppose I've got 2 questions really for Councillor Golby. One is, and given that this service was very seriously cut during the latter days of the old county council, are we confident that this service has the resources it has to fulfil these extensive responsibilities? And then the second question is, a note in the report about implementing a new computer system. And we're getting, I suppose it's true of any organisation, that these things are always more difficult and take longer than we hope that they will do to bring about. Are we confident we've got a realistic timeline and the kind of level of staffing to make sure we can do this efficiently and without the service of what I think is a very overstretched team being impacted on?
Yes, Sally.
Yeah, I can remember when we won awards for trading standards, and they were one of the best in the country for Northampton County Council before the cuts. We've got 13 officers covering a huge area, and such an important area, because you know and I know if anybody gets food poisoning at any age, it can be very serious, and if you're old, it could finish you off, basically. So I think I really do worry about the amount of officers we've got to cover such a huge area and so many responsibilities. They are the protection for the people of our county. And I know, I do understand we have budgets and we have things like that. But sometimes it's a false economy to have too many cuts. I mean, they have to deal with illegal tobacco. They have to deal with illegal vapes. We have people smuggling in tobacco from other countries, which are substandards, and selling it cheaply, and they have to investigate those. And some of those take a lot of time up to investigate, especially when they have to get underage people going in to look at them. So my plea is, if you look at 6.2 in the review, it says that due to circumstances, we did not complete 100% of our high-risk food visits. We actually completed 78%. Now, that's not a bad percentage if you don't, if the other 22 places were causing food poisoning for other people. So I do have concerns, and I just wanted them noted in the minutes that if people do get food poisoning or any sort of problems with what trading standards deal with, which is toys manufacturers coming in from different countries, with that they deal with those as well. So I think it's a lot of things that they have to deal with. So I think we need to make sure that we've got enough staff to deal with it all. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Beardsworth. Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Chair. Just on that point, the food visits, I know it is acknowledged nationally that there's still quite a lot of catching up to do post-COVID, and given the resource, it can only be done in a sort of sequential and sensible manner around the resources that we do have. And it's not lost on me. I know where the services were at the end of the time of the county council, but we have aggregated the three district and borough services from South Daventry and Northampton. And actually, when I went and met the whole team with Sally Burns back in the early part of the summer, it was a significant room full of people that were all very committed to doing the best they can with the resources they've got. Notwithstanding, we do know that that service is very lean, and it could do with, if we can, and we have budget, some further investment. As far as the computer system goes, again, I think that was the coming together of three or four previous council systems that have led to quite a few challenges getting that implemented. But I have been briefed that is on track, and when we've got it right, it will make significant progress for the visit. So for the service. So I'm happy that we do recognise what the challenges are with all of these services. They do some brilliant work. We had a vaping summit, which obviously crosses straight into public health, and we talked about the issues around illegal vapes and how children can get hold of them, the effects of children. So I think we're doing a good job, good comprehensive job, given the challenges, given the resource that we've got, and I'm happy we recommend the paper to Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matt. So councillor Golby has already read out the four recommendations on the paper. Is Cabinet agreed? Agreed, thank you. And that's councillor Golby can relax a bit now after that marathon session. Well done, Matt. Item 18 is with councillor Baker, and it's the Children's Accommodation Strategic Business Case.
First of all, I'd just like to say that I am really, really grateful to our council who've had the foresight to bring this forward. We are proposing to have houses for our children so they can stay in county and have good accommodation local to where they are wanting to be, not out of county. And this is a really good move forward so that we are proposed good quality accommodation at reasonable cost, and we are not inflating the bank balances of providers in the public sector. So to the serious part now, accommodation for children and young people in care is currently largely provided by the private sector, as is the case nationally. This can result in less suitable location and type of accommodation for West Northamptonshire children, and typically more expensive than they are provided in-house. The children's home market is recognised nationally at needing intervention. The council has therefore worked with the Children's Trust and North Northamptonshire Council on options for providing more accommodation in property owned by the councils. An initial set of proposals has been prepared for homes in West Northamptonshire. These are largely likely to be new builds, but may also include purchase and conversions. To enable action to be taken as swiftly as possible, it's proposed that the Chief Financial Officer, in consultation with the relevant portfolio holders and the Capital and Assets Board, be empowered to create individual scheme budgets. Proposals would be justifiably based on the potential to improve services and deliver value for money within the overall cap of £20 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. We've got 4 speakers on this, Councillors McCord, Randall, Holland-Delamere and Harris. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. This is good. I fully support what you're trying to do. My only criticism is it needed to have been done quicker, faster, sooner, earlier, and for a damn sight more than the 20. When you look at the paragraph 7.1.2, you just need to read it to see the business case stands itself up. This is such a no-brainer that it's so frustrating that the people mentioned in paragraph 5.2 are basically shysters on the most vulnerable part of our society. The only way we're going to take these people on and compete with them is to outplay them on their own field. So I fully support what we're trying to do here, and we need to do it. I would say build 50% more places than we actually need for our own homegrown requirements, and then let those out and let other authorities pay us the money. And I'm not saying that we enter into some of those other practices, but even if you have some of those costs, you would probably still be actually making money, and the whole of the public sector would be better off as a result of doing it. So that's where I would urge you to go to do that. The only point that I'm just a little concerned about is the little oblique reference to the recommendation that says, and change the constitution accordingly. Now, I think this is more around making sure that Martin and Malcolm have a little bit more flexibility on signing things off as the policy develops and the snowball begins to roll down the hill. And I don't want to hold that up. But I would only say that if you are going to make a change to the constitution, make sure it is project specific. So it's something worded around the lines that the rule is a rule, but there can be flexibility given by specific authorization of cabinet and or council, whatever, on a project basis. I would be very worried about changing the rules in general. And whilst I don't have any issues with Martin or Malcolm, you just have to look too far back into history to see when you have some wide boy section 151 and portfolio holders to what happened to the NCC. And we need to ensure that the constitution doesn't allow people to do that in other areas while we're not looking. But apart from that, I'm fully supportive of what you do. And all I'd say is get on and do it. In fact, we should have had it done from the day one of this organisation.
Thank you, Ian. It was nice to get something approaching a ringing endorsement. I entirely agree, though, with your description of the people engaging in these sharp practices to jack up the prices for children's homes placements. I mean, it really is the ugly face of capitalism. It does many people a disservice. On the constitutional amendment, in my conversations with the monitoring officer, I have had assurance that it will be specific to this decision at council. It won't be a broader. Well, not preempting the decision of council, that would be a decision for next week, but it will be specific to any decision taken by council next week. It won't be a blanket license to subvert scrutiny or anything else like that. If I can bring in Wendy now, Councillor Randall.
Thank you, Chair. Pretty much mirror exactly what Councillor McCord said. On the 7.1.2, it does say that there should be potentially a saving of 19,000 per child, which over that 51, I make it nearly £1 million a year saving. So I'm just wondering why we couldn't do more, really. That's all. I'd rather do more. You know, if we're going to be saving ourselves £1 million every year, yeah, why not? Do as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Keith, Councillor Holland Delamere.
Yeah, so welcome this. I share Councillor McCord's sort of concerns about scrutiny of this. My one question, because I'm aware of what Councillor Baker has said before about scrutiny and planning, etc. So we've got a case in our ward where basically it's a private children's home in potentially the wrong place. So I think really it's urging that as part of this project, there's a proper sort of strategy about consultations with councillors, consultations with communities, fact sheets, proper ways of making sure that when they are put in place, there's communications channels to communicate any potential issues. Because I think that we've got to really show as part of this how we're a sensible operator of children's homes, including that with our partners. So just really an urging that in order to try and get these through the planning process, as we know is a challenge, that we make sure that we're proactive with the communications with communities and councillors. So that's my main sort of concern on this one.
Thank you, Keith. Councillor Harris.
Thank you. Yes, I just want to echo the comments made by both the previous speakers. I think, you know, this is extremely welcome. Like Councillor McCord, feel like it's better late than never, but I feel like we should have been doing this much sooner. Just to echo the comments from, there was an Ofsted report published, I think at the beginning of August, which recognised that the largest ownership of children's homes are private equity, which is just shocking. To be honest, that just can't be right. And whatever we can do to disrupt that market in any shape or form, we should be doing it. Specifically, I feel like, again, like Councillor Holland Delamere, we've really got to focus on location appropriateness. It would be all too easy with the bandwidth here for the initiative to go out and buy properties and buy places. But I would just urge that we include local elected representation in that process, not the decision, but as soon as something's been identified, because I think we all know that some of these things can be sensitive, perhaps for all the wrong reasons, but they can. That's a matter of fact. So I think the more that we can get that engagement sooner, the better, and hopefully the less difficulty we will have when it gets to a planning phase. So welcome it. Really just emphasise the comments made by Councillor McCord. Let's make sure that this is ring fenced as a specific issue and a specific initiative, and not open the floodgates to anything and everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. I'm just going to bring in the Chief Executive to provide a bit of background on why this hasn't happened before today.
Yes, thank you very much. I guess a couple of reasons. Obviously, in the first instance, the Children's Trust needed to focus only on one thing, which was practice and staffing and getting all of those things right on their improvement journey, which they've done. The other side of it, of course, is we actually have a three-way contract with the North. And so our actual contractual arrangements create some complexities around 56%, 44% costs in and the same in benefits out, if you see what I mean. So there were quite a few conversations then to have to make sure we were clear we were influencing our own children, how we made sure who paid for what, which was a different challenge, and then how any benefits flow either back through the trust and get split or not. But we've, between us, worked up a really big pipeline of these, I have to say, really well together. I think the other thing is the trust needed capacity to be able to work out how we did this and to make sure that we could, you know, turn it to a benefit. And of course, the embedded resources we put in terms of Sarah and Matt and capacity to help them do that has really brought us on. And we've also brought the DFE on too, who fortunately, and in fact, have just announced some more potential match funding for some development of homes too. So it absolutely was not a lack of desire to do this. It was an obvious thing to do. I think it was just kind of aligning all those arrangements. So we're very clear how it flows. We're clear, very clear how we benefit our children and make sure that that works and we get the right properties in the right place. Thanks.
Thank you. And just on the question of more than 20 million, obviously, if this does bear fruit and pay dividends, I believe we will be back here, seeking the permission of first Cabinet and then Council for an extra capital sum to invest in this sort of project. 20 million is an awful lot of money. It will go a long way in the first instance, and as we see the performance of the scheme over the next few months and years, we can then consider how much more we should be investing in this venture. When it comes to the planning side of things, I would encourage all ward members, when they see this sort of plan application coming up in their ward, to sell the benefits of these facilities, that the help that they provide to children, the benefits as well in keeping the cost of the council down, which can then provide other benefits to residents. And I hope in a small way I'm leading by example on this, because there is one such facility just around the corner from my house. I welcome it entirely, and I think it's fantastic that we have these young vulnerable people in residential areas in comfortable small settings being given the care that they deserve. It's better for their long-term future, and I can assure people the disturbance to the surrounding area 99% of the time is zero. So, but I'll pass over to Councillor Baker.
I agree with everything that Councillor Brown has said. I think that there's a myth actually that all of these children are going to be disruptive, and that is totally untrue. They're no more. Some of them obviously are challenged, but most of them are just the same as any other child that we have. And we all have children in our neighbourhood who are quite disruptive, don't we? But what I was going to just to go back on, various people have said, we already have in place, I've already put in place a plan where anybody in the assets team, in the planning team, or in the children's trust that is aware of any building or that we are going to be looking at, that I know first of all, so that I will then, we've already done this because we've actually have already bought a couple of houses already, which we're converting. The 3 or however many councillors there are in the area, I've called them in to see me. We've talked through it all so that they're aware of what the situation is and the children that we're going to go in there. It's difficult to tell exactly because it will be who comes into the trust at the time. But these houses are, these accommodations are mostly quite small. We're looking at 3 or 4 children at the most in the biggest. Ones we have recently that have just recently been announced in my area, there's 2 children in. So I think it's just like, we want them to be in a family setting. We want them to be in an area that they recognise as being the home that they live in, not some far-flung county, because that's the only place we could find a house for them. I think this is amazing, and I'm really proud to have been a part of this, and I'm sure that we'll all support it because we're all corporate parents, aren't we? And we all want the best for these children. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor Baker. The recommendations are before Cabinet at paragraph 3. Do we have Cabinet's agreement? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 19, the penultimate item on tonight's agenda, is with Councillor Herring. It's the Local Authority Housing Fund Round 3 or LAF 3.
Thank you. This hopefully should be a good news story. The Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government have recently announced the 3rd round of the Housing Fund, and they're offering for just over 4 million, which is to acquire properties for temporary accommodation for families owed a homelessness duty, and particularly some further resettlement housing for those on the Afghan Citizens Resettlement Scheme. This fund we've got a very good track record in that the previous local authority housing funds round 1 and 2, they were delivered on time, and 40 properties were actually acquired. And of course, apart from obviously giving much better accommodation to those that are in temporary housing, it actually reduces our costs as well. there's no requirement for us to match fund in this particular round, the funding, but it's recommended that the council actually increase the capital programme of the HRA for of 5 million to go, 5.5 million to go towards the purchase of 33 properties, 8 of which will be for resettlement, Afghan resettlement programme, and 25 for the homelessness duty, to get families out of temporary accommodation, and that will be done over a period of 2 years. And I don't know whether anybody's got any questions on that, but I'm not sure what more I could say apart from, you know, it's a good news story to provide more properties. Even the ones that are going to be for the resettlement process will actually still belong to the council, even after perhaps these families have moved on. They will be available to the council in the long term for rehousing our own residents.
Thank you, Councillor Herring. 2 speakers on this, so you may get some questions. Councillors Purser and Holland de la Mare. Just Councillor Purser.
Thank you. This is obviously very welcome, if relatively small scale, because you have to look at this as against us having to sell our social housing stock. So we're paying full market prices as we buy houses, and we're selling houses at a discount. That seems to me absolutely daft. I hope the current government will do something about it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Purser. We wait and see what Ms Rayner comes up with. Not really a question there for you, Councillor Herring. So should we move to the recommendations?
Yes, thank you.
Quickly. It would depend on the type of tenancy that they that the tenants enter into after this programme, is my understanding. But Jane, are you able to clarify?
Yeah, so the housing is temporary accommodation. The first lot on the resettlement housing is for permanent accommodation. So if they're in the HRA, then yes, but the temporary accommodation, no.
So with that,
Leader, very quick.
Sorry, Councillor Hallam.
Very quickly, I'm really surprised that Councillor Purser saying about Angela Rayner, because I thought, like me, she was a huge fan of the right to buy.
I believe so. Thank you, Councillor Hallam. Recommendations are threefold. The Cabinet recommend to full council to agree an additional capital programme budget of 5.488 million to deliver LAF3. The Cabinet recommend to full council an increase in the total capital programme budget of 9.578 million that's funded by 4.089 million of LAF3 grant and 5.488 million of the additional budget required to deliver the programme. And finally, the Cabinet approve the recommend to council, I believe that should say, to enter into a memorandum of understanding with MHCLG to participate in LAF3. Is Cabinet agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Before we look at item 20, I'm looking to my left, and I need to ask if anyone intends to speak to the exempt items. So I'm getting an indication. So at that point, I need to ask Cabinet to resolve the following. That under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that if the public were present, it would be likely that exempt information under paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A to the Act would be disclosed to them. Does Cabinet agree? Agreed. Therefore, I need to kindly ask the gentleman at the back to depart and for Democratic Services